Thank you for this day. We pray that you will bless our time together today and pray you'll help us to make a little sense of the things, many things that are going on in the world related to Bible prophecy. Bless our time today in Jesus' name. Amen. Well, it's good to be back. Nice to come home to nice, windy Ohio after being in windy California. And then we flew back through Denver the other night. And I would say I've flown a lot in my life. I mean, a lot. And it was I don't know if bumpiest flight adequately describes it. It was the shakiest flight. I mean, I literally thought the plane was going to shake apart coming over the Rockies. So, but that's Denver. It's like that a lot. But this one was an order of magnitude above that. We lost a tree in the wind, a decent-sized pine tree, and it just, I don't know. Hopefully we'll be able to find somebody to come out and tear it apart. It didn't hit it kind of brushed the house a little bit, tore it right out of the ground. Didn't even break it off, and then across the neighbor, they had lost a number of pine trees, and they had a pretty big tree in the front yard and just snapped it right at the base. And I mean snapped it off right at the base. So that was pretty bad windstorm. But we didn't lose power. I know a lot of people did, and hopefully they'll get if they haven't, they'll get it back soon. So today, running out of time or buying more, I think is the way we're going to title this one. And I want to say that to recognize the new Ayatollah, who we'll talk about in a moment. We've updated our Iran chess piece with his bust and the question mark. Is he alive? Is he not alive? Is he injured? Is he uninjured? And there are a lot of memes going around that I'll show a couple of them today that are, I think, fairly clever. He's not been seen in public, and so we'll talk about that in a minute. And so this is the update on my non-updated Wheel of Prophecy. I need to go through and revise a few of these things, some of my chess pieces and everything. But it's really, for those of us who do this, it's increasingly difficult to keep up. I hope you can appreciate that. And sometimes when we do our updates, they seem a little bit chaotic and unorganized, mainly because the world seems chaotic and unorganized. I think we can agree with that. So just an update. I will be doing some interviews and things this week. Wednesday night is the next AI, technology, technocracy roundtable with the usual guys. That's Wednesday night at 7 p.m. Eastern, 4 p.m. Pacific. That'll be live streamed. If you have questions, please feel free to submit them to the moderators. And if you have a question like that, put it in all caps and say question, so we can figure out that it's a question and not, sort of a backhanded compliment or criticism of what we're doing, but which we get plenty of. Compliments, some criticism. So that's Wednesday night, 7 p.m. Eastern, 10 a.m. Thursday morning. I'm going to do Stand Up for the Truth on Q90 FM in Wisconsin. Go to standupforthetruth.com. I'll post links on my social media to this. And then Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, I'll be participating in the Prophecy Conference, and I do not remember what the title of it is, at Harvest Life Calvary Chapel. And I don't remember if it's Harvest Life Calvary Chapel or Calvary Chapel Harvest Life in Las Vegas, Nevada. I know Sunday morning I'll be speaking, and I know I'm speaking, I think, twice on Saturday, and then doing some Q&A roundtable type discussions during the conference. So if you want to get that, you can go to Harvest Life Calvary Chapel and in Vegas and find out all the information there. There is live streaming. I think there's a small charge for it to help defray the cost of the conference and that type of thing. I'm going to be speaking probably a little bit on Daniel chapter 8, possibly, but I think I'm going to also talk, surprise, surprise, surprise. Nobody ever talks about this at a prophecy conference. I'm going to talk about Gog and Magog. I'm sure nobody's ever addressed that before. Maybe not in this way, but I've been studying this, and I think, well, obviously I think I'm right because I'm talking about it, right? But I'll be addressing those in my talks and in the sermon on Sunday at some point. I'm not sure which order I'm going to go in. Hopefully they'll let me finish all the talks I have prepared, right? Or will have prepared by then. So this one's going to be a little bit back and forth. So I'm going to talk about the Middle East mostly and a lot of the things that are kind of swirling around, a little bit of a war that's going on in Iran right now. And it's not just Iran, it's a bunch of other places. I will be talking, I know at Vegas, I will also be talking about Turkey and Erdogan, because I think Turkey is a significant player in the end times. And I also think it's one that is largely, it doesn't get talked about enough, in my opinion. I think it's one of the major, if not the major players that are coming. And by the way, this week, there's not a lot of Turkey news. The interesting thing that Turkey is doing this week, their foreign ministers out there, and Erdogan is out there acting like, oh, well, we just want to make peace. We just want everybody to get along. We don't want this war. Bring peace. Now, the reason for that is kind of interesting prophetically, because we know that this white horse rider goes forth seeking peace, and through peace he will destroy many. Now, I'm not saying for sure that this is exactly what's going on, but it does fit the pattern. And a lot of other things fit the pattern of the prophetic scriptures. And so here's Erdogan, who has been very clever, keeping himself in power now for 25 years as the leader of Turkey. Now, he would say the democratically elected leader of Turkey, but it seems like whenever they're coming up on an election, the people opposing him start to have some legal problems. So now his main rival, assuming he's running, I'm not sure he's running, maybe he's going to resign. He turned 72 a couple weeks ago. So I don't know, but it says Erdogan's rival faces 2,000 years in bribery trial. Shock of all shocks. There's a great picture that I have that I've used in some of my talks, and it shows the progression of Erdogan's career. It's stair steps. The first stair step is a ballot box, and it says Prime Minister. The next step is another ballot box, a little bit higher, and it says President. How did that happen? Well, he was elected Prime Minister. He term limited out, and so he changed the Constitution to allow himself to be elected president for, I don't know how many 6-year terms, sort of like Putin did in Russia. And then they can run around saying, well, we're just democratically elected. But so you have the first stair step, the ballot box, the second stair step, the ballot box, and the third is a throne that says Sultan on it. And I think that's his ultimate goal, assuming he sticks around. Certainly that's the goal for somebody that's there. So let's just kind of roll through things on the what's going on. Now, one thing that you should be watching out for is that there are these terror attacks that are taking place. There have been a couple, 3, 4 in the United States over the past week. I think when you're out and about, you need to be situationally aware, because we don't know where these are going to take place. And I know that church security people who watch these things and issue alerts, it moved the alert status for churches to red this week. We have an Islamic problem in the United States. Now, it doesn't seem to rival the Islamic problem in the UK. Let me give you an example, though. And I don't even have slides on this. there was a store in London, I think it was, that was selling non-halal meat. Halal meat is how Muslims insist that their meat be slaughtered. So if it's halal, it's slaughtered a certain way. If it's non-halal, it's not done correctly according to Muslims. They started attacking this shop that was selling non-halal meat. The guy resisted them attacking his store. So who got arrested? The guy who owned the store. And then the mayor of London came out and said, we just need to get along. We need to stop this Islamophobia. And the term Islamophobia has been perverted and warped way beyond what it was ever meant. But up in Detroit area the other day, there was a terror attack at a synagogue that had about 140 children in the day school there, the yeshiva at the school, Temple Israel in West Bloomfield, Michigan. Now, so immediately, and this is a problem with social media, the fact that two things have happened somewhere does not mean they're connected. For example, few weeks ago, before this terror attack at this synagogue or temple in Detroit, they had a security update, a security instruction for people that went there, what to do if there's a terror attack. Immediately, these rather low intelligence people on the internet immediately said, see, it's a planned attack. It's a false flag, because they planned it, because they prepared people for an attack. Listen, folks, you got to be careful making these connections. And I see this all the time with people who get deep into conspiracy theories. And believe me, I get stuff that it's shocking to me that people claim to be Christians will send this garbage out and share the garbage, because I get it on a list. It's sent to an undisclosed email list with me CC'd, or BCC, a blind carbon copy sent to me. So I know this is going out to a lot of people, and sometimes I'll push back and say, you should not distribute this. Did you even bother looking into it? And then they get upset. And I'm like, so here's the rule. If you send me something, I may or may not read it. If I read it, I may or may not respond to it. And if I respond to it, I'm going to tell you whether you're doing something correct or incorrect. So if you don't want to hear that from me, don't send it to me. That's a pretty simple rule. But I have a tendency to, usually I have this you do not believe, I have this huge filter up here censoring the ideas that I want to put out there. I do have a filter, but if you're sending me things like this, particularly if it's anti-Jewish, I will respond, and you may not like it, and that's fine. Stop sending it to me. For some reason, there's a new update. I'm having trouble blocking people on my in my Gmail account now. And I'm about ready to just sort of blow up my Gmail account and delete everything and start over because it's totally out of control. But anyway, so a terror attack. So the guy drove into the school, into the hallway, and apparently when he drove in, he couldn't get the doors open. He started shooting through the window. There was I think he threw like a explosive device or something, and the security guards there shot and killed him. Now, it turns out that the guy was a synagogue attacker, lost family members in Lebanon airstrike. Now, this is the headline from the New York Times, which is wildly incorrect in many sense, because what doesn't it say? Oh, this guy, he was a Lebanese immigrant to the United States, and he lost family members in an Israeli attack in Lebanon. So he went after the nearest thing that he could do. He tried to kill, and believe me, if he had gotten into the school, he would have killed as many of those children as he could. Fortunately, the security guards had been trained, knew what they were doing, and they took him out. They neutralized him in the appropriate manner. But what about his family members in Lebanon? So people started, and I don't know that I didn't read the whole article at the New York Times. What I read is they didn't identify who the guys were. They were Hezbollah terrorists that were killed in an Israeli strike. And Hezbollah started attacking Israel this week. So now this was discussed on CNN, and I want you to listen how this one commentator on CNN describes what happens. There's somebody who pushes back on it. I think his name is Scott Kent. And it's, I think this was on CNN. Anyway, it was on the news someplace. And she's talking about the attack on Temple Israel in a suburb of Detroit. Listen to how she describes what was attacked and what she's trying to do here. Here we go.
To you on this. We have seen the
this
rise
is on
in
GB News in the UK. I'm
in...
sorry. So let me start that over again.
To you on this. We have seen the rise in anti-Semitic attacks in the UK since October the 7th, 3 years ago. But what's interesting, I think, where's the difference between the two countries is that we've had multiple Islamic terrorist attacks in the UK over the last 20 years, but not always at Jewish targets. We've had concert halls, we've had random tourists, we had 7th of July on public transport. They weren't targeted against Jewish people. Is it traditionally in America, not traditionally, but in recent times, have these attacks been predominantly against Jewish targets?
Well, I can't really speak on that directly. I can say that this situation, this was an Israeli temple. It was aligned with Israel. I will say that.
A Jewish temple?
A Jewish
synagogue is not an Israeli temple.
It's called the Real Israel Temple.
They're Jewish.
Okay.
They're the people of Israel.
How do you
just finish my point. So
it was wrong from the premise. They're not Israeli. They're Jewish.
So they're called the Real Israeli Temple, yes, and they do align with Israel and their beliefs. So this attack, also what we found out from the guy who attacked them was that he did have family in Lebanon that was killed from strikes, and that was confirmed. We don't know whether or not who those family members were, but it was posted on social media, his social media, the night prior to the attack, that it was actually his family and his kids that were killed. Now that hasn't been confirmed by any other news organizations, but that was seen on his social media, and that.
Okay, so the Israel Temple. It's called Temple Israel. It's a Jewish place of worship in the United States. But do you see what she's doing? Now, this brings up an interesting thing. Well, it's on his social media that he had family members killed. She didn't investigate that. She later put up a post trying to defend the nonsense that she was spewing on the program. And people started pushing back on it. So she deleted that post because she looked even, if possible, she looked more uninformed, I'll say in a nice way, uninformed than she was when she was talking here. And so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to play, it's about an 8-minute clip of Ruth Wasserman Land, who I really respect a lot. I'm still trying to get an interview with her, pray that comes together. I've been traveling. It's interesting. I've seen a number of interviews of people that I've interviewed in Israel before, and 2 or 3 times during the interview, they have to stop so they could run to the bomb shelter and then reconnect when everything's okay. So it's a little bit hard to do people in Israel because the missiles could stop flying. By the way, last Sunday I did something with Brian Schrager from Israel and Mark Sutherland from the UK. That was Sunday morning. You can go watch that if you want. And then Wednesday night I did a discussion with Brandon Holthouse, Tom Hughes, and myself at Rock Harbor Church in Bakersfield. Great evening to be with some good friends, and I think we had a pretty good discussion. So now I'm going to play Ruth Land. And again, Ruth Wasserman Land, former member of Knesset. I think she grew up in South Africa. I'm not sure. It's hard because she speaks like 4 languages, and I don't know how people do that. You know, I have enough trouble with, as you can tell, with English as a primary language. I still have a little, issues with some of the words, but because I pronounce them as how we learned how to speak them in the Midwest. Like I went to high school in Pennsylvania, and we didn't have slippery roads; they were slippy. But you know what I'm talking about when I say slippy, right? You might think it's silly and stupid, but it's correct, because the purpose of language is to communicate an idea. So I've communicated an idea that the roads are slippy or slippery. Very easy to figure out. So anyway, but I don't have, maybe I should just do subtitles and then everything would be a little bit better. But so she's going to discuss a number of issues. She's going to discuss the war in Iran. She's going to discuss cluster munitions, and then she's going to talk a little bit about Hezbollah. I did see a video clip of her this week where she was on a UK television, I think Channel 4 in the UK, talking about, well, why don't you just make peace with the Palestinians? And she eviscerated the guy. You'll see a much more refined version of that in this extended clip. So here, this is from I-24 News a few days ago.
I'd like to add something about the very smart and correct things that you've said, Ariel. We've entered a whole new stage in the war, using cluster bombs over and above the fact that it is completely against the Geneva Convention and international law. This is yet another, let's say, increase in the wish to create havoc.
So what she's talking about is when some of these missiles come in, you can watch the videos, they're all over the X and other places on the internet, the missile will break apart into cluster bombs. This is clearly improper, and Iran doesn't care. Iran is an evil regime. Here we go.
Kill more people, to increase the impact. It's not just clinical words in a laboratory. This is havoc, death, destruction. It increases the actual threat towards the EMTs, the emergency medical personnel. It increases the damage against civilians, which is exactly what the Islamic Republic of Iran wants. And this is what the world needs to understand. This is a whole new level of destruction, terrorism, and a complete disregard for human rights, because it's very, very trendy to attack Israel with that. But this is, let's say, a turning point in the Islamic Republic of Iran. Not that we needed any proof that they're inhumane.
State terror on the really highest level,
but
most industrialized level.
Exactly, on the industrialized level. This is a huge jump, and this is very important to stress and to explain that we are in a new stage.
Ruth, I want to focus on the other arena right now, say the Gulf states, the Arab states, beyond. What are they experiencing today? I know this is an arena you have your ear close to, sort of how the Gulf and particularly the Arab states are dealing with day by day, hour by hour. What's sort of the latest? How do you describe the situation they're in and how they fit into this picture as of right now?
So I think that there is an awakening amidst the Arab states. I think that there has been a hypocritical yet collegial sort of standing by the Islamic Republic of Iran, much like many things happen in the Arab League, brotherhood, togetherness, until a moment of truth. And yet there has been, at least declaratively, a kind of a standing together. I think there is an awakening, a rude awakening from that, after the Iranian Islamic Republic has attacked de facto all of the Arab states, which is absolute insanity. But Azerbaijan, there is Qatar, there is Bahrain, there is the UAE, of course, and Saudi Arabia. Many of these countries were asking the international arena, and particularly the United States, to prevent a war. and yet the Islamic Republic of Iran attacked them. And this is an important awakening. However, we need to understand on the Israeli front, this is not a love for Israel. Let it not be misunderstood. This is a realization that the Islamic Republic of Iran is willing and is, in fact, attacking the very sovereignty that they so much
Perhaps
try
more
to
dangerous than
protect.
they even really thought it was.
Of course. I don't feel at all that this is anything to do with Israel. I mean, with all respect, it's nice to hear nice words about Israel. Israel is well learned about if nice words are indeed, if they suffice. This is not about Israel. This is a threat that is completely extending to Europe, to the United States of America, to Canada. There are sleeper cells of the IRCG, which they will tap into when they feel that their backs are against the wall. And they're beginning to feel that. They've been creating those sleeper cells for years. This is one of the levels of the IRCG and the Ayatollah regime to protect itself. And this is something that the Europeans should wake up to. Germany has already begun to wake up to that. The UK and France, it's not that they're asleep. Their political arena and echelon are, I will say a very difficult word, are committing treason against their own people. Why am I saying that? Because they are allowing these threats to seep in for years into their own civil societies and to take root, and the same threat is going to take over them very, very shortly. Now, once this is already happening, the fact that, as you say, they are being led or more or less reluctantly brought into the fight, it's almost funny because they are the first that are going to be eaten, not Israel, because Israel is wholly aware of the threat. And this is, my heart goes out to the French and the British citizens, because there are many people amongst them that have no idea. They are being fed a narrative that has literally very little to do with the reality.
Now to come back to the studio here and bring the discussion back to Israel's conflict to the north of us here, where we left off just before
Now
the
they're going
break.
to talk about Hezbollah.
Ariel and Ruth in the studio here. Ariel, you touched on earlier that the biggest threat right now facing Israel is Hezbollah. And you know, Ruth, the effect on the people up there, this is obviously a really war-worn, battered part of the population in Israel that has seen an unbelievable amount of conflict. You know, how do you describe, you know, the plight as we enter another round here with Hezbollah? How do you describe what's going on up there?
So first, I want to emphasize that completely without any reason, Hezbollah, without being attacked, without being dragged into the war, openly, casus belli, open fire onto Israeli civilians. This is number one. Axiomatically, this is an act of war. And hence, what needs to be done is to destroy that threat. That is an absolute responsibility of any government on the face of the planet to prevent any militia anywhere on the planet from openly attacking its own citizens. That's number one. Number two, the civilians, the Israeli Jewish civilians in the north of the country, by the way, not only Jews, Druze, Muslim, Christian, and Jews, all together living in the Galilee and in the northern part of Israel, are being constantly sitting for days, mothers, grandmothers, children in the safe rooms.
It's hard to imagine.
Almost
even for us in the center of the country, it's hard to imagine.
It reminds us of years back, and it is exactly what had happened to our civilians in the south of Israel prior to October 7th. 20 odd years of absolutely constant barrages of missiles.
With little warning, if any warning at all.
Exactly, from Hamas onto the civilian population in the south. Likewise, from the Hezbollah, almost zero warning. And this is a situation which, frankly, is beyond. It's beyond something that Israel should be expected to accept anymore. These people have had enough. 20, 30, 40 years of endless barrage of rockets. This is unacceptable, inexplicable, and with all respect to the nice comments made by the government of Lebanon,
Right.
and God knows Israel wants peace with Lebanon and wants no war with Lebanon, but this is not good enough anymore. We will not have our people sit in the safe rooms anymore and have traumas for the rest of their lives and little children killed because you cannot not offer a safe haven to absolute terrorists who bombard innocent civilians. It is unacceptable anymore.
And
So she's right. So let me tell you a little bit about what's going on in Lebanon. I was up there in November when I was in Israel. We went all the way up to Metula. So if you sort of think of Israel as your hand, don't take this the wrong way. The middle finger here is where Metula is. That's the far north of Israel. There's like a little finger of it up there. And we went up to the Metula border. There was a listening post there that had been attacked. You could see evidence of Hezbollah rocket attacks. And then when you look down on the village of Metula, about 90% of the people had not yet returned. So they left shortly after October 7th, 2023. So we're there 2 years later. They have not come back. A lot of roof damage and that type of thing because Hezbollah was firing a lot of rockets into Israel. If you want to learn more about that and what the response should be, tomorrow at noon Eastern, you can go to israel-alma.org, israel-alma.org, and register for a webinar. They won't bother you with a bunch of emails or anything. It's just the way they do it to get people on Zoom. Zrit Zahavi and the people at Alma are going to do a webinar, probably about an hour, to tell you about what's going on. Highly recommend it. She is a superb analyst. I've not interviewed her, but I've interviewed some other people from Alma. They are all top quality people that understand the situation. And Ruth Land is correct. It has reached the point where Israel cannot tolerate this any longer. I talk to people in Israel daily, and they are tired. So they get awakened in the middle of the night to go to the bomb shelter because they launched. Now the missile attacks have dropped off dramatically. But how many missiles does it take to cause problems in what is termed by the Islamist government of Iran? Israel is a one-bomb country. They launch one nuclear weapon into Tel Aviv, it's over. And Israel cannot tolerate that. We would not tolerate that. It's sort of like saying New York City is a one-bomb city. It pretty much is. One bomb properly placed in New York City. And what's the cascade fallout effect from New York City going down? It's catastrophic. We saw what happened on 9/11. Remember how disruptive that was for weeks and weeks and weeks? So Israel cannot tolerate this anymore. Hezbollah has started, in coordination with Iran, launching more rockets into Israel. Israel has done a tremendous job dismantling Hezbollah, taking out leadership. The pager attacks, remember what happened? That was not even, I think, about a year and a half ago. It seems like it was 5, 6, 10 years ago now, right? Because of everything that's happened. But Hezbollah still has a force, and the Lebanese government seems to be trying to help. They've outlawed Hezbollah, but Hezbollah continues. The Lebanese army is very weak. The Lebanese army has long been infused with people from Hezbollah. People that are from Hezbollah and the Lebanese army are not going to go after Hezbollah. Makes sense. So this week, the new Sheikh, the guy who replaced Nasrallah, Sheikh Naam Qasem, he gave a speech because this was International Quds Day, International Jerusalem Day in the Muslim communities. They had big rallies in Iran. They had rallies in Lebanon. and he gave a speech. Listen to what he said. This is just quoting him so you can understand that this is really always about Jerusalem. And that's what the Bible prophets said, that in the end it would be all nations gathered together against Israel. And we've seen that playing out pretty much right in front of us. So he said this, our Imam Khomeini, the guy who did the Iranian Revolution in 1979, said, Jerusalem is an international day that is not only about Jerusalem, but also the day when the weak face the arrogant, the day of confronting the peoples living under the yoke of American and non-American injustice to the great powers. Therefore, this day has its symbolism in calling for the liberation of Palestine, and it has its symbolism extending to all the vulnerable of the world to be freed from the yoke of slavery and injustice. Boy, that sounds like the mayor of New York, who had a big Ramadan dinner in New York, inviting in a guy who's a terrorist. It's insane. This is New York City. The current war in Palestine and the confrontation against the Israeli enemy and the encroachment carried out by the Israeli-American enemy on the region and the world is in fact because of this sinful planting which did not let this region settle for more than 70 years and will not let it stabilize long enough as it exists and continues to exist. So now in the connection with Lebanon, here comes Emmanuel Macron. He's going to reach out and he's going to try to be a peacemaker. He wants to be a peacemaker. He wants some legacy. By the way, great thing about the French Constitution, he can't run for office in 2027. He's out of office. So there's a lot of people, I have friends, that believe, well, he's a candidate for the Antichrist. That came from that Economist magazine where he was walking on water. I've updated that with, I think, a more appropriate picture of how I think about Emmanuel Macron, sort of sinking beneath the waves. You see him there with his sunglasses that he had at Davos. What was up with that? Did somebody punch him in the face? Anyway, so I've updated that. That was from 2017, by the way. And so now we get into 2027 and he's going to be leaving office. But he's running around trying to say, we can make peace in Lebanon. And the word yesterday was he's even suggesting that Lebanon, as part of any agreement with Israel, would recognize Israel. Now, this is kind of interesting because it's an expansion. If it happens, it would be an expansion of the Abraham Accords, which I've said you need to pay attention to, and I might get to something later about that. By the way, Time magazine kind of built on the Economist magazine and put Macron on the cover in November of 2017 and titled it Europe's Next Leader. But it's kind of interesting that the M sort of makes little horns on Macron's head. I'm sure it's just an accident. Nobody's sending a message. However, on the, let's see if I can expand this. I did put a little all-seeing eye on his Napoleon hat. Because if you remember when he was sworn in front of the Louvre with that pyramid, there was like a red eye above the pyramid right above his head when he was sworn in back in 2017. And again, I'm sure it was just a coincidence. But however, maybe not. So, okay, so let's do this. And this is going to be a little bit difficult to organize. Let me get some of... Trump made a few statements this week. This was on March 13th. Moments ago, at my direction, the United States Central Command executed one of the most powerful bombing raids in the history of the Middle East and totally obliterated every military target in Iran's crown jewel, Karg Island. Our weapons are the most powerful and sophisticated that the world has ever known, but for reasons of decency, I've chosen not to wipe out the oil infrastructure on the island. However, should Iran or anyone else do anything to interfere with the free and safe passage of ships through the Strait of Hormuz, I will immediately reconsider this decision. During my first term and currently, I rebuilt our military into the most lethal, powerful, and effective force by far anywhere in the world. Iran has no ability to defend anything we want to attack. There's nothing they can do about it. Iran will never have a nuclear weapon, nor will it have the ability to threaten the United States of America, the Middle East, or for that matter, the world. Iran's military and all others involved with this terrorist regime would be wise to lay down their arms and save what's left of their country, which isn't much. Thank you for your attention to this matter. I always like how he finished it. President, he doesn't sign it, love Donald Trump, but we'll be waiting for that. But this is interesting about how this is going. So let's look at a couple things in his statements. In my view, the war has gone pretty well. They've really taken out a lot of the Iranian military structure. They've destroyed all the air defenses. They've destroyed radars. They've destroyed missile sites, missile manufacturing sites. They have taken out almost all of the Iranian Navy and ships. They have a few fast boats left. Those boats would be used to lay mines in the Strait of Hormuz. Most of those boats, my understanding is, have been destroyed. Now, the question is, were they destroyed before they laid mines or not? We've seen attacks on some ships in the Gulf region. For example, here's one burning that was attacked by, I think, a drone, an oil tanker. And here's the deal, is the oil tanker gets hit and it gets on fire. And when it gets on fire, it pretty much burns until it's out. You don't go up and blow that out with a fire extinguisher. So this is a problem. But the war has gone pretty well. They have even gone to the place where within Iran, they have taken out, this is kind of interesting. The United States hacked and Israel hacked into the street cameras in Tehran. Tehran got all these cameras from China, hacked into them, and then figured out how the Iranians were going about their business, including the military, the Basij, and the IRGC, the Islamic Revolutionary Guards. And they've, by the way, China now, there are pictures all over China on social media of China taking down their surveillance cameras in big cities in China because they don't want to be hacked. So turnabout is fair play. You guys hack us, we hack you, and I guess everybody gets hacked off about everything. But so what they've done is they figured out where these Basij or IRGC units were setting up checkpoints, and they're obliterating them. They're taking them out before they could do anything. Now, the question is that going to lead to a revolution? I've seen pictures of videos of big street demonstrations taking place. I don't know if they're real, to be honest with you. There's very little coming out of Tehran, out of Iran. Newspaper websites, news websites are pretty much down. And so the Iranians don't want you to know what's going on. By the same token, there's not a lot of information and video being sent out there by our government. Part of that is it's in a military operation. You don't want to let the enemy know how you're going about things. But listen, all the Iranian channels, the pro-Iranian channels, are out there saying, oh, see, United States and Israel, they're not putting anything up. That means it's going really bad for them. They're losing. Everything they have is being destroyed, and on and on and on. So right now in this war, it's a massive, immense propaganda operation, particularly on the Iranian side. They act like, remember the guy in the Iraq War, Baghdad Bob? I mean, everything is blowing up behind him. He was sort of like CNN. CNN, when they went to the Black Lives Matter protests, everything, the city's burning in the back. There's a minor unrest going on here in the city. And so Baghdad Bob will go out there as Iraq is being obliterated in a massive campaign and say, oh, we are on this verge of glorious victory. And this is what the Iranians are doing. This is what they do. So here's an article in the Al-Akhbar, which is a Hezbollah newspaper. Iran activates its strategic weapon, passage through Hormuz for friends only. So they have shut down, or trying to shut down, the Straits of Hormuz. Why is that important? 15 to 20% of the world's oil passes through there every single day. You cut off 15 to 20% of the world's oil, because oil, like everything else in the world now, is pretty much a just-in-time delivery. You know, it's like they don't make a lot of extra chickens at Costco. And if you've ever gotten there when the chickens are out, everybody's upset because we've run out of chickens at Costco. It's a great deal, by the way, $5 for a big chicken. But it's like that with oil. They don't have just like tons and tons of oil sitting around. So they're trying to shut down the Straits of Hormuz. Trump is now going after Karg Island. Iran under threat, oil doomsday warnings. And so the markets in the United States and elsewhere, the price of oil went from $60 to $120 a barrel, and then it's gone back down to about $100. It's going to be very volatile, and most experts say it's never going back to $60. Now, Russia's happy because they're not making money at $60. They're making money at $100. And the people that sell oil are happy. And even Trump says, oh, we make a lot of money when the price of oil goes up. Well, depends where you are in the supply chain. You know, if you're at the end user customer, you don't like higher fuel prices. By the way, we were paying, we got to California, it was like $4.90 at the bargain fuel places for regular. I got it for $4.69 one day, and I thought I had the equivalent of winning the gasoline lottery in California. And the next day, every place I went, at least along major freeways, was $6.10 a gallon. But then I tell my friends in the UK, and they say, we pay $9 a liter or something like that. It's ridiculous. I know. How many liters in a gallon, right? No one knows. Remember that George Washington bit on Saturday Night Live? Well, it's about 3.3 gallons. But anyway, and gas is very expensive in Israel as well. So doomsday oil warnings. I don't know that the oil markets are going to shut down. The United States went into Karg Island. It's in the Persian Gulf, off the coast of Iran. It's about 5 miles long or so, and it's their main oil terminal. It's kind of interesting. Why do you call the place where the oil shipping begins the terminal? Anyway, so we've sent Marines in there. We bombed all the military infrastructure on the island. Didn't touch the oil infrastructure. That's what Trump was talking about in his Truth Social post. But 90 to 95% of Iran's oil begins here. If it's disrupted, that's a major shock to the world's oil supply. Now, the good news is it affects China mostly. And that may be what's behind this. We go into Venezuela, we kind of take control of the oil there. China gets a lot of oil from Venezuela. They get a lot of oil from Iran because they get it at a bargain price because it's under sanctions. So now we've cut or made China very concerned about its oil supply. So that's good. There's a lot of things at play here. So maybe this war is really about China, but really you cannot let Iran have a nuclear weapon. You just cannot. So Marines and sailors, about 5,000 expeditionary force has been set to Hormuz to go to Karg Island. Here's an article in the Times of London yesterday or today. The 4 options open to Trump so he can finish the job in Iran. let me suggest to you, there was a great interview that I saw this morning, just put up by Duran Spielman at JNS TV go to the JNS channel on YouTube, click on videos. One of the most recent videos will be Duran Spielman interviewing Amiat Chikli, who is a security military expert in Israel. He talks about the options. So he said this morning, I was listening to the interview before he came, one option is Reza Pahlavi comes back and takes control of some new constitutional democracy in Iran. Amiat, who's a pretty smart guy, says that's probably the least likely scenario that's out there right now. This is not going to happen quickly. The United States wants to stay in this maybe 3 or 4 more weeks. It's not going to happen in 3 or 4 more weeks. The Iranian government is very sophisticated, and military are very sophisticated in the way that they're organized. They have, for example, if the leadership is taken out, there are leaders to replace them. But these leaders may not know about these leaders, so they all operate independently. So now instead of one big leadership, you have a bunch of cells of people that you got to take out, and it becomes very complicated. And it makes it very complicated because, as Amiat Chikli noted in his interview, that the protests started too soon. So in the protest, Trump uses the number 32,000 people were killed. I don't think that's accurate. In fact, I saw a IRGC memo that said it might have been 95,000 people killed. But understand, they killed people, they wounded at least that many, and they imprisoned pretty close to that amount. So you take out the early protests, all the young leadership and everything, how do these people get organized to take down the regime? I don't know. Now, one way is to bomb, and attack all the different IRGC, besiege, and all those people. But does that, and maybe some of them are defecting, some of them are giving up. But Iran is a very big country, 4 times the size of Iraq. And Iraq didn't necessarily go all that well for us after the initial stages, because we took out the central government, and then what happened? All these different factions and militias started forming, and here we sit 25 years later, it's still a mess. This terrorism thing is a problem everywhere. In Canada probably has the largest number of Muslim Brotherhood adherents or people of any country. Canada is not a huge country. And most of Canada lives near the American border. So here is a conservative member of parliament. I think she's the sort of like what would be the whip in American politics, talking about what she sees going on in Canada, because the government is not dealing with the problem.
There have always been conflicts abroad, and rarely have we seen them spill into our streets the way that we have since this liberal government has been in power. We now know from the Iranian community right across the country, from many others, that there are hundreds of IRGC agents presently on Canadian soil, using Canada as a safe haven to organize and to fundraise and to terrorize diaspora communities right here at home. We have seen now critics of the Iranian regime from out west, an investigation now being treated as a homicide, somebody who is critical of that regime. We see constantly, particularly as an MP from a region who represents many in that community on a weekly basis, those calls coming into our office, informing MPs and at all levels of government, including authorities, that they are terrified of living within their own communities. The hundreds of agents that are here today live in Canada with complete impunity, and we have a Liberal government that has done absolutely nothing to stop it. We've seen violence against businesses, gunshots into Iranian activist businesses. We've seen terrorism in the Jewish community. We now are amongst nations that lead the world in attacks against Jewish institutions. Today we are calling on the government to table a plan to get rid of these terrorists that are on Canadian soil.
Well, one thing they could do in Canada is identify these terrorists as truck drivers, because we know the Canadian government will shut them down in a minute. And by the way, pray for Ohio. My understanding is that Amy Alcott in the latest poll is up by 10 points over Vivek Ramaswamy. Do you remember what she did to this state? Those daily briefings? So, you get the governments you deserve, I guess. So here's an editorial from the Wall Street Journal. Khamenei cemented the U.S.-Israel alliance. One thing that has happened in this war, which is unusual even for World War II, is the extent of cooperation between the United States and Israel. Now, let me make a comment. There's a guy named Brett Weinstein. I think it's Brett Weinstein. He's an evolutionary biologist. Back during the Charlie Vector days, he was very popular because he looked at the science involved with all the state-approved treatments, and he did a great job. But he was on Tucker Carlson the other day, and he's Jewish, obviously from his name, but he's saying, oh, well, Bibi Netanyahu gave Trump a golden pager. That was a message to Trump: if you mess up, we'll do to you what we did to Hezbollah. People are losing their minds. Do you understand what he's saying? That the United States is intimidated by the Israeli. Donald Trump is intimidated by Bibi Netanyahu. I have trouble wrapping my head around that. But people are saying this stuff all the time. Even people who we thought were allies intellectually or ideologically, like Tucker on many issues, have completely gone anti-Semitic. I'm not going to tolerate it. Okay, if you don't like me criticizing Tucker and that bothers you, I'm going to, on the way out, I want you to understand, you need to reset your discernment meter if you think that guy is okay. He is a complete, total propaganda op. Block me, unfriend me, unfollow. I don't care. I'm more about the truth, and I can see what Tucker is doing. I have studied this for years. I have spent hundreds and hundreds of hours of researching this, as have many others. For example, there is a X account named Insurrection Barbie. I don't know exactly who the person is. She claims to be evangelical. I don't know. All I can say is she is putting up some of the most well-documented, well-reasoned articles on the issue of the Russian Dugin influence on the American right and other things, and the attempt by certain elements of Catholicism to undermine the right wing in America and the evangelical right wing. So I put up those articles. I can tell you what she says in those articles is true. I have researched it ad nauseum. Rare Foundation, Amy Meek, Trevor Loudon, many, many others have talked about this red-green alliance axis that's infecting the right wing in America. So what happens? So somebody goes out there, the one person that comes to mind is Emerald Robinson from Lindell TV. She goes out there and says, oh, Amy Meek is a convicted, or not Amy Meek, I'm sorry, apologize, Amy. Insurrection Barbie is a convicted felon. You shouldn't listen to anything that you say. And I've received a number of emails. John, you recommended Insurrection Barbie, and she's not a very good person. Listen, and this is what I tell them. First of all, as Christians, we are what? People of grace, right? So maybe they did something wrong in their past, but deal with the substance of what is being said in those articles and stop this propaganda op. Oh, that's a bad person. You shouldn't listen to anything you say. If you fall for that, you've fallen for it. You've fallen for the propaganda op. And yes, this person from Lindell TV, Emerald Robinson, and I have friends who work at Lindell TV, so don't say I'm saying everybody at Lindell TV is bad. I'm just saying I've been following her for a while, and I have a major problem with her anti-Jewish bent. And so today there was another article that Insurrection Barbie put up. Follow her on X and read the article. She talks about this, and she mentions Emerald Robinson by name, along with Candace and somebody else. I don't think it's Carrie Prejean, but that's a whole nother propaganda operation there. But so deal with the substance of what she says, okay? For example, I don't know, maybe Tucker has bad taste in wine. I don't think that's a reason that you should reject what Tucker says. You should reject what Tucker says because it's demonstrably false. While I'm thinking about it, let me give you an example. You know, a lot of weeks I come up here thinking, this is not going to last very long. How's that going? So he was interviewed the other day. Remember Trump and others, Bibi Netanyahu, who said we want unconditional surrender. We want unconditional surrender from Iran, which is what we said in World War II, right? Listen to what this creep says about that and how he twists this into a propaganda thing for the Iranian government.
Unconditional surrender means foreign troops get to rape your wife and daughter if they want. And everyone knows that. And that has been, if there's one consistent lesson of history, it means unconditional surrender means foreign troops get to rape your wife and daughter. Everyone can feel that. That's like the most atavistic instinct there is. And so to avoid that, people will do anything. And so that's why it requires that level of force to get a population subdued to the point of unconditional surrender. That's why. And so in this case, of course, we don't have the ground force necessary. I don't think Americans would voluntarily participate in it. I just don't think we can do that. It would require weapons of mass destruction. It would require presumably nuclear weapons in order to do that. And let's not lie to ourselves. We're moving toward that.
Do you see how vile that is? Do you see what he just did to every military person in the IDF and the United States Army? Military. If they surrender, our guys are going to be going and raping your women. It's vile. It's vile on an epic level. By the way, I was down at Gaza Envelope a couple times when I was in Israel last fall. I talked to the first responders, the first IDF guys to get there. What they saw and what had been done to women and children and men, sexually abused, raped, and mutilated, body parts cut off. I'm telling you, it's hard for me to describe it. And Tucker flips that like it's us. So here's the rule. I said this a long time. Leftists will always accuse you of what they do. Tucker will defend the Iranian regime. By the way, I saw this week doctrinal writings of the Ayatollah Khomeini from the original founding of the Iranian Republic about how it's okay to sexually abuse prepubescent girls. By the way, I said this at Bakersfield, and I stand by it. Tell me the difference between what Epstein was doing on his island and Muslim Allah's heaven. Same thing. This guy defends it and acts like it's the opposite. It's unbelievable to me. So Melanie Phillips, she has a good article at the Times UK. This is no Iraq. We must limit the Islamist threat. And she's exactly right. You can go get that. There are links to some of these articles in the show notes. There's a few more things I want to go before we have to wrap up today. We need to talk about the new Ayatollah. So this is The Economist, a war without strategy. Look at what's happening. Everything's going to tank here. There's in the damage to the world economy for the Iran war will be severe, but uneven. Here's a couple-minute clip of some of the panelists at The Economist talking about what's going on with the world economy.
Just give us a kind of short overview of what the impact is of the energy supply shock we've seen to date.
It doesn't look like the supply through the strait is going to be resumed anytime soon in anything like the numbers that it was before. This is 15% of the world's oil supply, and that's even net of the tankers that are rerouting. But it's actually worse than that because we're also losing about 20% of the world's liquefied natural gas that comes from Qatar, and they've shut down their production for now. I think the consequences of that are being felt particularly in Europe because only very recently Europe has weaned itself off Russian gas and onto LNG. So these two things happening at once are kind of reverberating around the world's energy markets.
Greg, clearly a huge gap between what markets are expecting and the reality. From your position in Riyadh, talk us through how people see things there, but secondly, how quickly, even if the security situation improves, how quickly can production start? How quickly can things begin to get back to normal?
So the sense in the region is very much that this is going to be a continued disruption. And it's not just because of the security situation. It's because even if the strait reopens tomorrow, even if the war ends and there is safety for vessels passing through, there are going to be physical constraints to restarting production and getting oil and gas moving. If you look at the oil industry, there are, in Kuwait, for example, and some other countries in the Gulf, firms that are starting to shut down their oil wells because they're running out of storage for the oil they're pulling out of the ground. So they're doing what's called shutting in their wells. Once you do that, it can be difficult to get them restarted. It can take time. In some cases, especially with older wells, you might not be able to get them restarted at all. So there might be a lasting disruption to energy supply. And then similarly with gas liquefaction in Qatar, if you think of it like your refrigerator that's been turned off after a long blackout, when you plug it back in, it takes time for your refrigerator to cool down again. The same thing with gas liquefaction. You have to get that gas down to something like 160 degrees below zero. The whole plant has to be cooled to that temperature. Once you turn it back on, that doesn't happen immediately. So we're looking at, in terms of physical disruption, probably a month or more before we can get back to pre-war levels of oil and gas.
Well, that's good news, right? By the way, I was going to title this in an unusual update. The news is not that good. I mean, this is kind of a negative week. I mean, even in the UK, for example, they're talking about reopening the North Sea. Why did they shut down the North Sea? You can see the oil platforms there from off the coast. I've seen them. Because they went green. We'll just do batteries and solar and wind. Solar doesn't operate all the time. Wind doesn't operate all the time. You need continuous on energy. And Europe is completely, I don't know if I would call it this, shooting themselves in the foot. So here's a marine traffic map. You see the Arabian Peninsula there in the middle. And there's a couple of choke points. One is the Straits of Hormuz up there between the United Arab Emirates and Iran. And it's about, I'll say roughly 20 miles wide, but the shipping lanes are about 2 miles wide in each direction. These are big ships. You can see these are massive ships. So you can go to marinetraffic.com or .org, I think it's marinetraffic.com, and you can click on, set the filters for tankers, and you'll see every tanker on the ocean at that time. It will give you its position. If it's got its transponder turned on, it'll tell you where it's from, where it's going, and that type of thing. So today I looked at it, and here's a little blow up of it. There was like one ship going through the Straits of Hormuz. Right there. And it's a choke point. There's another one, the Bab el-Mandeb Strait down off Saudi Arabia. And what's interesting is Saudi Arabia sends most of its oil to the Persian Gulf. Let me go back to this. Okay, so Saudi Arabia, most of its oil facilities are over by Bahrain, and so that's where they ship a lot of their oil. Their refineries and things are, but they do have some pipelines. So if you go over here, what do you see? There's not many ships there off of Saudi Arabia, one of the biggest oil producers in the world. Where are they? They're all over in the Red Sea. They've been able to shift production over there. But now the Houthis are saying, well, we're going to shut down the Bab el-Mandeb Strait here, entering the Red Sea. Now, they haven't been heard from much lately. They're making some noise. And I'm just telling you, if they start to do anything, I am highly confident if we still have bombs left, we're starting to run out of some stuff, Trump is going to send some big bombs down there to take care of the Houthis. And I'll have to revise my Houthi chess piece again because I don't know how to make the obliterated chess piece look correct. So this is a big deal. So The Economist says the world's going down, everything is happening, and there's a new Ayatollah in Iran. So this is my new Iranian chess piece. Hamas, by the way, is saying, please stop attacking the other people in the Gulf, Iran. That's kind of interesting. And here's Bombard standing. So the other day, they said, hey, we're going to send the new Ayatollah is coming out, and he's going to give a speech to talk to everybody. Nobody's seen him yet. He has not appeared in public. So the word is anywhere from he's dead to he was severely injured. He has severe lower leg injuries. He lost a leg. He's in critical condition in the hospital, but nobody's seen him. He's the unseen. He's another unseen imam, and who knows what he's doing. So here's the Iran activates the Hormuz weapon, Al-Akbar. We are going to the end. We're going to do this. Now, this has led to some interesting memes about the Ayatollah, because they came out where he was supposed to appear, and they had literally a cardboard cutout made up to look like the imam, the new Ayatollah. So everybody's doing these little memes, like I want to be a real Ayatollah, and then you see all the pro-Iranian people, Tucker, Marjorie Taylor Greene, Candace, and Thomas Massey, having a candlelight vigil for the cardboard cutout of the imam, the new Ayatollah. So who knows? But if you think, Gatestone Institute has a great article this morning, Iran gets a new supreme guide. Now, I don't know if I agree with his premise that the Ayatollah Khamenei, who I still don't think they've had a funeral for yet because they're afraid that Israel or the United States might use that as an opportunity to take out leadership. So I don't know if he's been buried yet or not, but this article says, well, he wasn't really an extremist in the beginning, but to survive in an extremist environment, he had to become an extremist. I think he was an extremist all the way along. They say his son is even more extreme than the father, Mojtaba Khamenei, the unseen Ayatollah at this point. And he's a hardliner of a hardliner. So you can read about that. A lot of articles. So here's one. This is the Newsweek. An island at the center of the New World Order talks about Diego Garcia and how this plays into the China-U.S. conflict. There's also a good article I think this is in the New York Times. So there are all these weapons, we shoot missiles, they shoot missiles. We shoot drones, they shoot drones. And they cause a lot of damage. I mean, here's a picture in the I think this is a highway in the United Arab Emirates. They're attacking the United Arab Emirates. People live in these beautiful resort towers in Dubai are saying, we're leaving. Saw a picture of the airport the other day, probably the busiest airport in the world. It was wall-to-wall people trying to get out. It's interesting, I have Jewish friends in the United States from Israel. They're trying to get back to Israel. They want to get home. It's kind of an interesting juxtaposition. So a lot of these social media influencers who live the great resort life in Dubai, they're talking about getting out. One of the things that has been used, iron beam and lasers have been used, I think, both by the United States and Israel in defending against some of these missile and rocket attacks. The only problem with them is they have very limited range. So you need a lot of iron beams, a lot of laser defense systems, because they might only be able to operate a couple miles at most. They're very effective in that range, but if you have something that's not within that 2 miles, it's not effective. And if the weather, if it's foggy or dusty, a lot of pollution in the air, they're not extremely effective. They're great. They only cost couple dollars instead of $120,000 per or $2 million per missile to shoot down a $120,000 drone. So it's great that the technology is changing, but it's a problem. So I have there are a lot of links in the show notes. You can look at those later. Okay, this is John Spencer. Now, I know by putting up this article, immediately I'm going to be hit with, John, you're falling for Israeli propaganda or U.S. propaganda. So there's a divide out there. Is the U.S. doing well? Is it not doing well? The pro-Russian, pro-Chinese, pro-Iranian people say, oh, Israel and the United States are just getting hammered and destroyed. John Spencer, good military guy. I think he went to West Point. Very, very good speaker about things. I think I've played some clips of him talking about the Gaza tunnel network and why they put the tunnel under. They put the tunnels in and then they put the hospital on top of them. They put the school on top of the tunnels, Hamas did. Why? Because they knew Israel was going to have to bomb that tunnel, and to get to bomb the tunnel, they had to bomb the school. They use their people as human shields. It's a violation of international law. But he goes through in very good detail. There is a link to his article in the notes under this video. Go to the video, and it starts with the title, and then down below there's a little bit of a description. There's it says more. Click on more, and it'll expand that description. It'll show you all the show notes. That's where they're located. And he says, we've taken out all their vaunted air missile defense systems that have been sold to them by China and Russia. We obliterated them. They're pretty much gone. But he makes this note, and I think this is correct. Modern warfare is no longer defined by individual weapons platforms alone. It is defined by networks. Western militaries have spent decades investing in systems that integrate satellites, aircraft, drones, sensors, cyber capabilities, and precision munitions into a unified battlefield architecture. This allows forces to detect targets faster, share information instantly, and strike with extraordinary precision. And I think that's true. But Iran buys Russian missile defense systems, and they're like, well, we've got Russian missile defense systems. We're going to be okay. The question is, where does all of this go? There's an interesting graphic in the Times of London this morning. Hormuz risk toppling world's trade dominoes. What's going to happen? Good graphic. I think I used dominoes one time. I should copyright this stuff. It changes air traffic patterns. This is today. up above, you can see how air traffic is avoiding Iran. And this is below is what it was like a year ago. It's very disruptive to airlines. So here's a battle map. You can see all the strikes that are taking place around the region. That's at inss.co.il or .il.co. Institute for National Security Studies in Israel. Great map, great resource, free on their website. You can find it. Here's the Times of London editorial cartoon, The Drums of War. And it's turning to be all about oil. So Karg Island is this little island that's in the Persian Gulf off the coast of Iran. 95% of the Iranian oil goes through that island. Trump has struck the military installations there and may be sending in troops to take complete control of it. Don't have time for that one today. Okay, so here's a good article at the Free Press, also at Hudson Institute. And I'm just telling you where this is going. So what it's doing, it's kind of bringing these Gulf Arab countries together and sort of pushing them into an alliance with Israel. And so this author at the Free Press says the Middle East is ready for the Abraham Accords 2.0. I think this is very prophetically significant to look at the way this alliance is forming with Israel. But believe me, I've said this to people in Israel, don't trust those people. I know you think the peace and everything is good, but they may turn on you at some point. And then this is an article at Hudson Institute. Air defense in the age of saturation, Europe after the post-Cold War peace dividend illusion, and Turkey's steel dome. Now, the Hudson Institute will bring you people who are very pro-Turkey, just as a general rule. So understand that they're biased in the way they say this, but what this guy is saying, and based on what my research is indicating, is that Turkey, which is an incredibly significant country in Bible prophecy, you need to pay attention to it. Watch Turkey. Watch Turkey. If you didn't understand that, watch Turkey. Very important. And what Turkey has done is Turkey is itself also doing this, what John Spencer called this integrated military defense system. They call it the Steel Dome in Turkey. Israel calls it the Iron Dome, is one of the aspects of that. There's many other components to it. So it's important to watch these developments. Turkey is going to become increasingly significant. Again, this week, Turkey's running around acting like, oh, we're the peacemaker. We just want everybody to get along. But they know there's a problem. They got a problem with the Kurds. The Kurds are trying to go into Iran. Turkey would love to go into Iran if Iran's going to fall apart. You just need to pay attention to it because the situation is going to be very fluid over the next few weeks. So just a few more headlines. Oil windfall gives Russia a big day. That's true. Khamenei vows to keep the Strait of Hormuz closed. Yesterday's Financial Times, Wall Street fears ever rising oil price, and interior article says Iran war chokes sulfur flow vital to industry. What industry? The food industry, fertilizer. There could be a food shock from this too. I'm sure nobody is bothered by the prices you're paying for food right now anyway, right? It could get worse. European capitals seek Hormuz deal with Tehran. So France and Italy are running to Iran. We want to make peace. We want to make peace. This is Financial Times, so it's European, so you got to factor that in. Iran surpasses expectations with scale of counterattack, and then tankers transfer illicit Iranian oil in plain sight. And just a few more headlines here. The oil price war, Iran and the rising perils of AI in warfare. Just talked about these integrated systems. We're going to be talking about AI in warfare technology on the roundtable Wednesday night at 7 p.m. The Technocracy Roundtable. And energy shock will further damage fragile inflation psychology. And then this other one, why Iran could become the next Iraq. There's also a number of people saying, Naftali Bennett in Israel and other ones, saying, guess what? Turkey is the next Iran. Why? Got to watch Turkey. You should get that from Bible prophecy. You should just get it from basic geopolitical analysis. Okay, that's enough. Oh, didn't finish early like I thought. It's a very complex world in which we live, folks. So, again, I'll be in Las Vegas Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, Harvest Life Calvary Chapel, doing a conference Friday, Saturday. And I know I'm speaking at church on Sunday morning. They put me in the last slot on Saturday. And Pastor Kurt Reed said, we did that. Then he sent me a thing like, do you want to go to dinner at 6:30 on Saturday? I'm like, I wanted to say, do you think I'm going to be done? Keep my food warm. But anyway, look, if you can watch that, that would be great. Or attend if you live out there. So let's pray. Lord, we just pray, Lord, that you will fill us with your Holy Spirit, Lord, that you will give us wisdom to live in a very difficult time when things are difficult to understand and figure out what's going on, but also help us to be committed to staying in your words so that we can understand those things as you have laid out that they will, as to how they will happen in the end times. Pray you'll give us strength. Pray you'll give us opportunities to share the gospel with those around us. Bless us this week. In Jesus' name, amen.